Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. As you can see, I'm still at A Haggerty 10. That's still Sean Martin. Good morning to you all. It's 3 days after Livingston, Sean. People now coming to terms with it, getting over it, one would think. Celtic move on. Ferencváros on Thursday. We'll discuss that in detail tomorrow. But a couple of things that happened over the weekend, Sean. One, it'll be interesting to see, as Ian Dowie famously said on Soccer AM and made up word, Celtic's bounce back ability, Sean. Mm-hmm. You know, it was all chuntering along very nicely and a wee bump in the road. Now let's see what happens now, and if Celtic can go to Hungary on Thursday and get a result and just in general play a lot better.
I think that is spot on, that using that phrase there, because I don't think it's like I don't think it's been derailed or anything this season.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any need for that kind of reaction. I think it was a poor result. It was a gut punch of a result, really, considering that as much as they didn't create much for large swathes of the game, that they had a penalty in injury time, another chance in injury time, and still didn't score. So in that sense, it obviously feels a wee bit like one step forward, two steps back, because the 4 point gaps there again. But there's still a long way to go. And I mean, Rangers have got difficult away games to come, so we'll see first and foremost if Celtic get back to winning ways, but we'll see if Rangers also manage to navigate difficult away games the way Celtic just did. So I think it's just been disrupted rather than derailed. So I wouldn't say it's like let's forget about Livingston ahead of Ferencváros. I'd say it's more you want Celtic to use that frustration, because it was frustrating to try and respond in kind against Ferencváros and then ultimately against Dundee on Sunday.
I think it's going to be one of those seasons, Sean, where both sets of Glasgow teams are going to be up one week, maybe down the next week, with points dropped to and fro. You know, it's going to be one of those kind of seesaw seasons. I think that somebody will be in the ascendancy and then somebody will close the gap and then stuff like all the way till the end of May, I think.
I agree. I think that's exactly the way that it will go. But from Celtic's point of view, you're looking for that wee bit extra to not maybe fall back into the trap that they had earlier in the season, where it was like should have won, but ultimately didn't win. That kind of thing. I know it was only a draw. And it wasn't a loss on Saturday, but situations like that kind of feel like a loss to Celtic a lot of the time. So I agree with you. I think there's points to be lost across the city as well.
Now, the biggest decision that Ange Postecoglou might have on Thursday night, without looking too far ahead to the actual match itself, is team formation. And the big hole that he has to fill is Karel Starfelt, who limped off with what we believe is a hamstring injury and will be out for a few weeks. Who do you play in there, Sean? Do you move Beaton back into that kind of role? Do you bring back in Stephen Welsh? Or do you maybe say to Liam Scales, do you trust him? Or what's your thoughts? Because I know I was speaking on the other podcast that I do, and the thought of Beaton stepping back into that centre half role just fills me with utter dread. I'll say that right now. I'll get that. I'll put just those cards on the table. I say, play Beaton further up, keep him out of harm's way. But even then, I still don't think he's out of harm's way. But it might be a needs must.
I mean, it could go near Beaton. I don't think it would be a popular decision to move him back. But I would say that given that he's been used in like his natural midfield position lately, and couple that with the fact that Tom Rogic is injured, then maybe that suggests it's not going to be him once again having to start in central defence for a vital European game. So to answer your question, for me it's got to be Stephen Welsh. I think he was in fine form, more than fine form earlier in the season, to the extent that we were talking about him as a potential Scotland senior call-up. We were talking him as Julien going to get back in the team if Welsh keeps playing the way he's playing. All that, obviously, he's subsequently dropped out of the starting lineup, and I think he obviously made a mistake or two as well, but he is still young. I think since Cameron Carter-Vickers arrived, Stephen Welsh's role, has been pretty much the one we expected him to have at the start of the season, like an able deputy type thing. And I think this is exactly the time that an able deputy steps in. So I would want to see him be given the nod.
I also felt that Welsh was maybe hard done by. He's been too strong, but he didn't do too much wrong, did he, Sean, to actually warrant being left out the side, you know. And I think if he gets handed the starting jersey, then it's up to him to run with it, isn't it, and make a case for himself again.
I mean, I used those exact words, that it was hard done by the first couple of games that he dropped out, but he did obviously come back in, and unless we forget, him and Carter Vickers have started together once, and that was the 1-0 defeat to Livy. And admittedly, that was one of the days where Welsh didn't exactly cover himself in glory with the
Sean
defending at the Andrew Shinnie goal. But regardless, for me, he is the first in line after the main two centre backs, and I would hope to see him get the nod.
Got a plethora of opinions coming in here, Sean. Frank Brennan, we can only ever properly move on if we know for sure that lessons are truly learned from mistakes that were made on Saturday, and that there can be no repeat of avoidable basic errors. Great. Simon Thomas comes in and says it's frustrating, but Celtic are still on a 6-game unbeaten run. That's very true. Kookaburra agrees with you, Sean. It has to be Welsh, no question. Frank Brennan, again, completely agree. Mustang can only be Welsh. Seems to be a lobby for Welsh. And David Bradley comes in here, gives Scales his chance. Tony and Sean, let's see what he's got. Again, we're speculating, but the man who gets paid all the money, i.e. Ange Postecoglou, he'll have those headaches to consider for Thursday, and he'll make the call. But I would say Welsh, but there's part of me that does want to see Liam Scales, to see what he has got as well. It's David's point there, but I don't know in a game of this magnitude is what's required for Scales, because if you win this game, you're in with a great chance of qualifying. You're making a fist of it in terms of qualifying for the next stage of the Europa League, and I think he would maybe want Welsh there.
I think so. I mean, it could be Scales. I doubt it. I think it should be Welsh, and I think it probably will be Welsh. I think Scales has kind of said before he does prefer centre back, even though when he's featured so far for Celtic, it's been at left back. But even that, I mean, that said, he's not been in any of the past 3 match day squads since he got that 15-minute kind of cameo against Ferencvaros at home. So again, I would suggest it's probably going to be Welsh for me, and I'm quite happy with that too.
Now, up front, Sean, Kyogo or Giakoumakis?
I think this is going to be a recurring topic this season, as long as both are fit. But no, still Kyogo for me. I still think centrally, I still think he's the man. I think that was no slight on Giakoumakis when I said it before the Livy game, and it's no slight on him now either. It's just I just think if you're asking, I always like to think on it, if you're asking everybody, if everybody's fit and you're playing the 3 up front, and you're not going to assume Ange's going to tinker with the formation to play both of them up front centrally, then who would you pick? And I'd pick Kyogo every day of the week.
Is Ange becoming Ange Ranieri? Bit of a tinker man? Do we hesitate to say these words now? Become the old tinker man, the Scottish equivalent of. But he does like to chop and change, doesn't he? That's the thing. And I think he blindsided a lot of Celtic supporters on Saturday with dropping Kyogo to the bench and bringing in Giakoumakis. I can see what he maybe tried, but it was evident after the first 45 that it maybe wasn't working,
I think so. I think the St Johnstone game, as much as Giakoumakis scored, they did only have that one shot. And the way that Kyogo influenced proceedings when he moved from wide to central, winning the penalty, getting 2 players booked at the same time, all that kind of thing, I just think that showed you the difference when it's him playing up front. And Giakoumakis is still in his early days, as much as Kyogo is, but Giakoumakis even more so. So it's again, it is no slight on him as a player or anything. I just prefer Kyogo through the middle. I prefer what he gives you off the ball as much as I prefer it on it. And I think I would like to see him back through the middle again on Thursday.
Simon Thomas, Kyogo must play in Europe. Tony, we will see McCarthy start a game in Europe. That's what David Bradley says. That's all another consideration, I suppose. Yep. Jim Stevenson, do you think Ange will ever change his formation? That's a $64,000 question, Jim. We've been posing all season, and the answer so far has been no. But needs must sometimes, horses for courses and all that. But we'll see what happens. But I think the greatest frustration shown on Saturday was kicks from the penalty mark. I don't know if you've ever, you will have played football, Sean, and you'll have taken a penalty before, and I don't know what your approach was, but always favoured a bit of a hard, hot shot, Hamish type placer, you know what I mean? And and by rattling it, even if the goalkeeper guessed the right way, he was never getting it because the ball was travelling at lightning speed. Now, any player can miss a penalty. I get that. I think it was just the casual nature of it and the fact that Juranovic, who was still on the park, had confidently rattled his 2 penalties home and expertly taken them. And I'm not blaming Giakoumakis. These things happen, but I think when you see the nature of the penalty, that lackadaisical 1 yard run up and the soft touch from the spot, it's you were going to win a game there. You put a bit of oomph behind that, do you not? Well, I would have.
1 yard run ups for me. It's the only one that I don't mind was Mark Viduka with 1 touch. 1 yard run up, and he was still getting the top bag. But no, I admit it was a poor penalty. It was, of course, the caveat as always with a penalty is if it goes in, and it was then not a poor penalty, but it didn't get in. The keeper got it. It was poorly struck, especially for, as you say, the type and the time of the game that it was at. I said to Alison and Andy yesterday, though, I did think it was Juranovic that was a penalty taker. That all you can do for me is be inclined to take the manager and the captain at face value. That it always has been Giakoumakis since his arrival, but it simply wasn't on the pitch when Juranovic and McGregor had split the last 3 between them. So in that respect, Giakoumakis stepped up when he was supposed to, and he just missed. It's frustrating, but it does happen. Although, as I say, it was a poor hit, I agree, but I don't think there's anything more really to it than that. I think a more interesting question is who takes the next one.
You just said who takes the next one. Did they draw lots or did they have a fight? Yeah, it's a bit. I guess it depends who's on the park, doesn't it?
It does, and that is why there was the kind of confusion certainly from the fan base, if not the players, because there didn't seem much confusion on the pitch as to who was taking it. I think most people probably thought it would be Juranovic, but the players obviously knew it was Giakoumakis, and that reinforces what McGregor and Postecoglou said after the game. It's just unfortunate that he stepped up and wasn't having a great game, but whether that played into it or not, I don't know. It was a poor penalty, and it was a bad time to hit a poor penalty as well.
Yeah. Now you've got a plethora of opinions coming in. Simon Thomas, Johnson on the left, Jota's a 10, Forrest on the right, Kyogo up front. Isaac McQuaid comes in. The penalty was too casual and soft, should have been blasted with precision. My thoughts exactly, Isaac. Blasted with precision. Indeed, the goalkeeper read Giakoumakis' body language. That's probably true. David Bradley comes in. If the Greek didn't know the pressure, I'm sure he knows now. Not the start he was looking for. I guess so. Frank Brennan, we are currently nowhere at the stage of any kind of effective rotation as to who plays in what games, and if we're serious about the league, we must always start with our very best 11. Keep your comments coming in, guys. We do enjoy your opinions as well. Kieran Nolan, penalties require a strong mindset. Totally agree with that. But yeah, I mean, players can miss penalties. It does happen. I just think it was the nature of the penalty, wasn't it? And the way he went about his business that I think didn't endear Giakoumakis to the Celtic supporters on Saturday. And I guess what we're saying, he'll certainly know now, won't he?
Well, on Dave's comment there, like that is exactly it. He will, if he didn't get the pressure, he will get it now. But more than anything else, same when you miss a sitter, same with that kind of thing in the course of 90 minutes. If you miss a sitter, it's how you bounce back from it. It's why Kyogo has endeared himself so much, because he's missed. We've talked about it before. He's missed few sitters already, but it's the fact that he's constantly after that getting back into the positions to score or to even miss another one. Whereas sometimes some strikers would miss a sitter and go hiding because they don't want to be the one to miss another one.
Yeah.
But that same logic applies to missing the penalty. It's how Giakoumakis bounces back from it now next time he's on the pitch for me.
Frank comes in again. Always start with our very best 11, get the goals that we need, and then we can bring off Kyogo and all the rest with half an hour to go or whatever. Yeah, I agree with
that.
Yeah, and it was just surprising because of the way they kind of blew Hibs away in the first half an hour at Easter Road. I felt that same team should have started, with the only exception being beaten in for Rogic. And let them go again.
When Beaton came in, and it wasn't Beaton's fault, obviously, it was the fluctuating way that the game went. That Celtic had already destroyed them in the first half, and that naturally leads to a different kind of game in the second half. But the second half with that lineup that would have been starting, they weren't particularly great against Hibs for the second half after that, although they still saw the game out fairly comfortably. No small thanks to Joe Hart as well for that, right enough. But I would agree with you. I was kind of hoping for the same team as much as possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, taking Rogic out with the kind of form that he was in there with the injury would have been and was always going to be a big miss. But regardless, I was quite surprised. I thought maybe it was maybe an injury or a knock for Kyogo. But what Frank says there, I totally agree with that. I think now, not just because there's a gap at the top of the table, but just in general, the squad depth still isn't really there for me to rotate too much. And I agree with his underlying point there that if anything, you were looking for the rest to come in the last third of the game rather than the first 2 thirds of the game, that kind of thing.
Now Liam Collo comes in, he makes a point. You need to have a certain character to pull the penalty and know when to try something like that in the 93rd minute. When you're needing a winner is not the place to do it. I think most people, Celtic supporters, are in total agree with that. And David Bradley comes in and says, Tony Abada looks well off it. What's happening with him? I think in Abada's case, he's just suffered a wee drop in form, hasn't he? A wee dip in form. And, you know, and that was another decision that baffled me. I used the phrase parachuted in to the first team. I meant the first team, but to get called out for it yesterday because people said he was a substitute and he came on against
first 11,
you know, but I meant in the first 11, having been axed from the squad and sitting on the bench the past few games for that very fact that he'd gone off the boil. But I think the return of James Forrest will help him because he'll know the bar that's been set, Sean. Once Forrest gets up to speed again, he'll know what's required to get back into the side. But, you know, he hit the ground running and he did very well about it. But it's fair to say that he's not shone in recent weeks and has been on the bench for that very reason.
I agree. I think we've kind of talked about it before in terms of, me and Alison spoke about Forrest coming back and that we still expected him to be first choice. Even when Abada was playing well, we still think it's Forrest's jersey, if you know what I mean. It's still him that's going to be the number one winger, or depending on your thoughts, maybe the joint first winger with Jota now. But regardless, I think Forrest will start wide right. I think it's good to have him fit again. It also takes pressure off of Abada because he was starting twice a week, every week for however long there. He is still young. He's only just turned 20. Just arrived at the club. All of those caveats still apply. He's going to go through peaks and troughs. This is just a trough at the moment. The fact that he was having to play twice a week for that long, same way with Turnbull and Rogic when they were going through a wee bit of a trough. It shines more of a light on it that you've nobody to come in and take the pressure off and give them a couple of games on the bench, that kind of thing. So having Forrest back, I agree with you. I think it'll actually be a benefit for Abada.
Simon Thomas says the same. Abada will improve now. Forrest is fit to take his place. That's it. It's healthy competition for players, and you raise your game, especially when you see if someone wants to take your jersey. That's natural at any football club, you know. But
I also think you're saying like what Simon said there. I think the way in which he might find these kind of niches for this season, if everybody's fit, is we all know how direct he can be, how much he likes a goal, all that kind of thing. And I've said before that it wasn't necessarily that Ange's tactics or system wasn't working. It was more that when it wasn't quite going to plan, there wasn't anything to come off the bench and reinvigorate it.
Yep.
Abada is exactly the kind of player that could come off the bench and reinvigorate a game. In my opinion, he can come on, he's direct. If he's feeling it, he sniffs out a goal. It's good to have that type of option to throw on.
He can also reinvigorate himself in the process.
Exactly.
In the tail end of those couple of games where he wasn't playing well, he was getting a wee bit of a shuriken from supporters, and not saying they were booing him, but they were kind of, they were getting a bit frustrated with him. So if you can come on and play cameo roles, do what Mikey Johnson did against Leverkusen, and then the game after that against St Johnstone, and then he get a start against Hibs, that kind of thing. So if Abada can come back in and make a telling contribution, basically, is what I'm saying, Sean. So I think that's vital for him. And Joe Bellick comes in. Yes, competition's required. That exactly. I totally agree with that. I think and if Celtic can get to January, they will bring in more players. That's the one positive will happen in the transfer window. So it's just about and someone said earlier in the comments, they're still on a 6-game unbeaten run, which is decent. Sean, he looks a bit weak to me, strength-wise. David Bradley saying about I would assume Abada.
I think you could level that criticism at Jota sometimes as well, the way that he gets pushed, but it's more about the It's more about if Abada when Abada has been feeling it, when he's been on his game for Celtic, that's not really been a worry for me, because his movement and his directness is compensated for maybe any physical shortcomings, if you know what I mean. Just the same as Jota's skill and dribbling and eye for goal has compensated for any that he might have. I don't think that there's any harm in him bulking up a bit. He's still only 20. He's still going to grow in his body a wee bit more. So it's one to keep an eye on, but it's not necessarily a massive concern of mine just now.
Well, it'll be the dream team tomorrow. Myself, Sean and Alison McConnell discussing Ferencvaros in great detail and in great length. Listen, this has been the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live, and if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the subscribe button. You can see the start line going along the bottom, and support top quality journalism by covering the club you love for £1 a month. Thanks for your contribution, guys. Thanks for the comments. Always enjoy the interaction. As I say, we'll be back tomorrow, whether you like it or not. 10 o'clock, we always are. You'll find us here on the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. Thanks very much, Sean.
Cheers, Tony.